welcome back to Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is 10 cards you should be putting in your Commander deck, episode 13. Starting out this time with Dystopia, 1 black enchantment. Cumulative upkeep, pay 1 life, which is really just about the most insignificant cumulative upkeep you will ever see, right? You're going to play this card, and of course, don't have to worry about it right away until a whole turn cycle goes by. And then on your first upkeep, you pay 1 life. You know, like who cares, right? You can very easily keep this thing around for a long while. And I will also point out, paying life is something that there are commanders that actually want to be doing that. So that can actually be an upside for you. And the payoff here is pretty good. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a green or white permanent. So obviously you don't want to be playing this in your Orzhov deck or your Golgari deck, right? Just put this in any deck that is black that is not playing green or white, and it's just going to be huge payoff. Now, what are the chances I'm in a commander game and I don't have any opponents playing green or white? I don't know if that's ever happened, right? It's likely never going to happen. This will probably never be a dead card for you, and it might be absolutely fantastic for you. Could be extra good if you want your opponents to be sacrificing stuff. Of course, there's a lot of decks in black doing that. It's a little stacksy, I guess, but I don't know. If you're not okay with this in a commander game, I don't know what to tell you. I think it's perfectly okay to force your opponent to sacrifice just a green or white permanent only on their upkeep, right? That's not so bad at all. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic fit in certain themes, but also could pretty much go in any deck that isn't playing green or white. Elder of Laurels, 2 and a green, Human Advisor, 2/3. Pay 3 and a green, target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So this is not the greatest, sort of giant growth type of effect we've ever seen. The rate here might not look good, but it can be incredible. And the big thing about this, of course, you want to be having lots of creatures in play, right? If you're paying 4 mana to give a creature +3/+3, that's terrible. But in certain situations, this can be incredible. I got 7 creatures in play. Now I'm paying 4 mana to give a creature +7/+7 is certainly worth it. And of course, the best thing about this is it's repeatable, right? There's no tapping here, anything like that. So if I got enough mana open, now I can give that creature +14/+14, right? So I know on its face it doesn't look good, but how many other cards can do this? How many other cards can you sink mana into like this and make a creature enormous? Obviously, if you want to be getting in for commander damage, this is a card that can just do it in one shot relatively easily. If you got enough creatures in play, of course. If you're playing an old Gnawbone deck, oh boy, this seems like a phenomenal fit in my opinion, because of course, whenever your commander deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. I mean, I guess any of your creatures dealing damage, but likely you're going to use this on your commander. So not only could you use it to knock out one of your opponents, but you're also going to create a zillion treasures, which of course you can then sink into the ability on the next turn. So I think it's a pretty good fit there. Coming in at number 3 this time is Earnest Fellowship, 1 and a white enchantment. Each creature has protection from its colors. And this is a card that I've said in the past I think is not necessarily an auto-include in a 5-color deck, but if you have a 5-color commander that you don't plan on targeting at all, this just gives your commander protection from every color, which seems pretty amazing, right? So I think in a lot of those situations, it might be an easy slot in, right? Regardless of what you're doing in your deck, if I'm just playing like a Sliver Queen deck, obviously I'm doing Sliver Tribal there, but I don't plan on targeting my commander with anything. And it's a 5-color creature, so with this in play, now my commander just has protection from every color. That seems pretty good. Makes it unblockable too, I might add. Next up, we got Elemental Resonance. 2 green, enchantment aura, enchant permanent. At the beginning of your first main phase, add mana equal to enchanted permanent's mana cost. And I will point out very specifically, they are saying mana cost here, not mana value. And reason for that is what it says in the reminder text here. Mana cost includes color. So that means if I put Elemental Resonance on, say, a creature that has the exact same mana value as my Elemental Resonance, which is 2 green, on my first main phase, I will get 2 green. Getting 4 mana every turn, color symbols included, seems pretty good. This is actually a decent ramp spell. Doesn't have to go on a creature. You can just put it on an enchantment or something like that. If you have an enchantment that's just sitting on the battlefield, you don't really have to worry about it getting removed. This is just giving you free mana every turn. It's a really interesting, unique card, I think, and a decent ramp option. Coming in at number 5 is Echoing Decay, 1 and a black instant. Target creature and all other creatures with the same name as that creature get -2/-2 until end of turn. So of course this was a cycle cycle that came out in Dark Steel and doesn't see a lot of play in the Commander format. None of them see a lot of play in the Commander format because, of course, it's doing the same name thing. 2 mana, give a creature -2/-2 until end of turn isn't very good. The same name thing needs to be used here. I think this card is actually worth it. And of course, both the tribal token and just regular token in general have just completely taken off over the past few years. There are so many commanders now that are cranking out tokens, again, whether they be tribal or otherwise. And this is pretty great against all of them. Just think about a goblin deck, right? This will wipe out most goblin decks. This will wipe out most elf decks. Those tokens are likely going to be toughness 2 or less. Zombie decks, of course, fantastic against those. So it's a neat little piece of tech that you might want to include in a deck if you happen to have a lot of guys playing decks like that in your play group. Also, funny enough, works against the offspring mechanic, right? Because of course, that's making a token copy of that creature. So you're probably going to hit at least 2 if it has a toughness 2 or less. Pretty neat card. I think that deserves a little more attention. Really unique card here. Earth Surge, 3 and a green enchantment. Each land gets +2/+2 as long as it's a creature. So very unique card. I don't think there's any other card that does anything like this in the entire game of Magic. So giving it a mention for that reason. It's one of those cards that, yes, it's very niche, but it also is incredibly unique. So if you are in any deck that is turning lands into creatures, this is a great anthem for your land creatures. Moving along, Elfheim Sanctuary, 1 and a green enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal that card, put it in your hand, then shuffle. If you do, you skip your draw step this turn. Okay, I know this seems awful. First of all, very important to point out, this is a may. You're not just skipping your draw every turn. You may use this. And also, you may not. You may just leave it there and draw a card like you normally would. I know it seems awful, but what this card ends up doing is it guarantees you a land drop every turn, which a lot of people will say is very important in the Commander format. You can just, instead of drawing a card and hoping you get a land, you can just guarantee you get a land, right? You just skip your draw step and essentially just go search for a basic land so that you can play it. It also mana fixes. And yes, I know green does that pretty well already. In fact, it does it really well already, but it does mana fix because I can go get whatever land I'm missing out of the colors that I need. So it is pretty good there if for some reason you want to be putting lands into your hand. Some decks just want to be putting lands into their hands for a variety of reasons. And it is also, in my opinion, an absolute slam dunk in the very unique situation where you are skipping your draw step already, like a Damia Sage of Stone deck. I think this is an auto include because you're already skipping your draw step. So this is getting you, of course, your commander's trigger at the beginning of your upkeep to get 7 cards in hand. And of course, because this is an upkeep trigger, you will stack it appropriately so that you will have your Damia resolve first, fill your hand, and then have your Elfheim Sanctuary resolve and go get another card out of your library, which of course is a basic land. So it's just free value there. Pretty neat card, and of course a unique one as well. Coming in at number 8, we got Elen Lair, 3 and a red world enchantment. And if you don't know how world enchantments work, you can go watch my video where I talk about all the different world enchantments. They are all very unique cards for the most part, and most of them are pretty darn powerful as well. This one is one of my favorites. It's very unique and interesting and fits in a lot of specific themes. So at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player exiles a card at random from their hand. So this is going to happen with everybody. Everyone's turn, they're going to be exiling a card at random from their hand. That player may play that card this turn. At the beginning of the next end step, if that player hasn't played the card, they put it into their graveyard. So this card on its face doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot. What's going to happen here is on everyone's upkeep, of course, they exile a card at random from their hand and they can play it that turn. Okay, well, not really accomplishing a whole lot, is it? Well, it does accomplish quite a bit, in fact, in a couple of places where I've put this card. I put this in the Hazoret deck that I made because, of course, Hazoret wants you to have less cards in hand. So if you have a deck that wants you to have less cards in hand, this will make a card go out of your hand for at least a turn. It's also a great fit, of course, in any exile tribal deck because this is playing cards from exile. It is at random, but this is going to assure you to have a card in exile that you can play on your turn. It also is a really neat piece of tech, in my opinion, to sort of hose your opponents a little. In particular, I'll throw one example where I think this is a great fit. Against a control deck, what's going to end up happening is they're going to exile a card at random from their hand, and let's say it's a removal spell. Well, now they have to use that removal spell in their turn. They can't just pass their turn with all their mana untapped and use it when it's convenient for them. They have to use it now, or else it's going to be thrown into their graveyard, right? And even better, if they remove a counterspell from their hand. If you got a buddy who likes to shove tons of counterspells in his decks, he might counter this when you cast it, which eventually will end up happening. I'm sure the first time you cast this, he'll think it's nothing special, and then he'll start to realize quickly, wait, every one of my turns, this is exiling a counterspell out of my hand that, of course, I can't play on my turn because there's nothing to counter, so it's essentially just making me discard a counterspell every single turn. So it's a really neat piece of tech against a very heavy control theme as well. Really interesting card. One of my favorite creatures of all time, Elven Warhounds, 3 and a green dog, 2/2. Has some pretty neat art on it as well, but a very, very unique ability. Whenever Elven Warhounds becomes blocked by a creature, put that creature on top of its owner's library. That is a very powerful ability. And when this card first came out, I believe combat worked a little bit differently. There wasn't all the phases and steps back then. So this card actually wasn't as good. It's gotten a lot better after they changed things because, of course, what ends up happening is you attack with this guy. As soon as anyone assigns a blocker to it, that creature gets put on top of the library, but before, of course, any damage is done. I know it doesn't look like much, but this card does not ever take combat damage because of the way that combat works. So, of course, it makes it so that it's useless for your opponents to block this guy, right? They'll just not block it. Why would they want to put a creature on top of their library? They'll just end up drawing it the next turn. Essentially, it becomes they skip their next draw, right? And they have to recast their creature. So, of course, they're just going to let this guy get in for damage. And that means this is now a creature that can very easily get in for damage. That's all right. Only does 2 damage, not great. However, there's some really neat things that you can end up doing with this guy. The best one, of course, being the lure effects. Any lure effect with this guy will force your opponents to block with all of their creatures. And then, of course, all of their creatures will go on top of their library. That is an incredibly powerful effect, and I think worth it to put in a deck to basically board wipe somebody. I mean, it's not only a board wipe, but you're stacking all those creatures on top of their library, which means that's all they're drawing for the next however many turns. That is a devastating play in a commander game. You're almost knocking someone out of the game for the next few turns. If you throw trample on this guy, of course, trample says if I don't assign damage to those creatures, I'm assigning it to the player instead. So all those creatures get put on top of the library, and then when we go to the combat damage step, oh, there's no creatures to assign damage to, so I'm still getting in for damage with this guy. I mean, this ability is so powerful, you could almost build an entire deck around it. Put a lure effect on this guy, give him trample, give him maybe some damage triggers. It almost could be a Voltron commander. That's how good that ability is. See if it fits in a deck that you're already doing. Again, if you're already doing a lure type of deck, it's an absolute must, but it also might be a great fit in any deck where you just want to be getting in for damage all the time. All right, I'm going to end off today with a card I've never talked about on my channel before, and I think it's a really interesting one. However, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to use it. So, Elusive Tormentor, 2 black vampire wizard 4/4. Don't really care about this so much because it has pay 1, discard a card to transform it. So the front side's not doing anything. It's just a 4/4. We want to transform it so that we can get the backside. The backside is very interesting. Insidious Mist. It's a blue card. So this does have to go in a deck that is both black and blue. Keep that in mind. It's an elemental 0/1. Hexproof and indestructible. Wow, that's pretty good. So we have a creature here that is both hexproof and indestructible. And I will just point out that alone can be significant. However, it gets more interesting. Insidious Mist can't block and can't be blocked. So you can't just use this guy as a blocker. So that strategy is out if you were thinking of doing that. However, it can't be blocked either. So now we have a hexproof indestructible creature that can't be blocked. That sounds amazing. However, it's only an 0/1. So what's that going to get us, right? We are in the situation just like the Elven Warhounds, funny enough, where we have a creature that we can guaranteed be getting in for damage with every turn. But of course, this creature doesn't deal damage, so that's not going to do a whole lot. When Insidious Mist attacks and isn't blocked, which of course it won't be because it can't be blocked, you may pay 2 and a black. If you do, you transform it. So the thinking here is I'm going to flip this guy over. Once he's flipped over, I will then swing with him. He can't be blocked. And when he's not blocked, I will pay 3 mana, transform him. He'll now be a 4/4 again. Of course, he's not blocked, so I'll be getting in for 4 damage. Hey, that's a neat little trick. However, it's not a great one, right? In a commander game, paying 1 and discarding a card and then paying 3 more mana just to get in for 4 damage seems terrible. I think this could be a good fit. Could be a good fit. If you guys could figure it out, I'm throwing it out there. In a deck where the backside is going to be usable for you, right? What you're going to do is, of course, you're going to immediately flip this card over to the backside, and then you're just going to use the backside. I'm never going to flip this thing over, right? Paying the 3 is an optional thing, obviously. So of course you don't have to do this. Once this is flipped over, you now have a hexproof indestructible creature that can't be blocked. How can you use that? There's got to be a way, right? There's got to be a deck out there that wants to be just attacking with a creature and not have it blocked for whatever reason. Again, similar to the Elven Warhounds. Maybe I want to be getting in for damage, but of course this guy doesn't actually get in for damage. Maybe what I want to do is just have a creature attack and not be blocked for whatever reason. Maybe again, I'm in that situation where I can just pump this guy's power or whatever. Maybe I have the Elder of Laurels there and I can give him +X still in a turn. Maybe we're brewing a deck here. We can make a Sultai deck with Elven Warhounds and Elder of Laurels and Insidious Mist. This actually might be a deck idea, but I just think this is a really unique card. It is a hexproof indestructible creature that can't be blocked. There's got to be something that you can do with that, and maybe someone already has a deck that it can fit into. All right, there you go. 10 more cards that you should be putting in your commander decks. If you are thinking of selling any of these cards and you want to ship them to somebody, give Panda Postage a visit. It is a new sponsor for this channel. The link is in the description if you plan on sending any Magic cards to anybody you know or just sending anything in general. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.